Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. The future is an interesting topic today. 10 years ago, you could have easily said, okay, the future is intelligent machines, free music, all those little things. But today, to even talk about next week is a big challenge. Right? Think about next year or 10 years from now. So the next 10 years will bring more change than the previous 100 years. And that's not an overstatement. And most of those things are going to be good, but we also have to keep a very good eye on what exactly it means. Because basically today, science fiction is becoming science fact. Right? In here, I have the Star Trek thing that they used 40 years ago to determine location. I have my bank, my friends, my dating, if I was dating, and many other things. They're all in here now. And now Apple, just 3 days ago, moved intelligence inside of this. Right? The iPhone is now an intelligence instrument. We're moving into the era of intelligence, the intelligence revolution. And just like the Industrial Revolution, there will be a few things that are going to be hard and other ones that are going to be much, much better than ever before. I talk a lot about the good future and what it means. What is the good future? Well, obviously, instead of a bad future, the bad future will be hunger, not self-fulfillment, no work, a bad political situation, and so on. What is the good future? So I'll take you on this path towards the good future a little bit. What's really important about the future is to develop the ability to see it. Observation. The future is not about prediction. Prediction is very difficult. Some people have done that, Arthur C. Clarke, Space Odyssey, and Steve Jobs and others, but it's very rare. So today it's about observing. We need these ears. You cannot buy them on Amazon, unfortunately, but just to pay attention to what goes on. And the interesting part is that it's not so much about data. Data and logic, that will be very helpful. It's about intuition, right? Because there's so much data. Where do we invest? What is most important? What's dangerous? What's good? Those are all kind of soft factors that we're looking at. The future isn't something that happens to us. It's something that we make. I lived in the US for 20 years. Right? I'm from Germany originally. I live in Switzerland now. And in Europe, we still have this kind of, we don't make the future, we wait it out. Right? And this is a big problem for us because now the future is moving so fast. We have to make the future. Every decision we make creates the future. So just a few days ago, Google's I.O. project, I.O. event, and Project Astra showed us the future of learning, for example, by having this child learn with an AI that helps her do math.
Yes, I only understand what you're doing here.
Well, this is obviously really boring stuff if you're not into math, right? But I mean, imagine this, you have your tutor that actually answers questions that are in text. And you speak to it. That was truly science fiction. Maybe still is to some degree, to see how that actually works. But we're going into a future where those things are getting very, very real.
48 posts published across 9 platforms.
This guy actually is using Claude's new thing, Fable, was released yesterday, to create apps that he copies from other apps. The stuff that Claude is making possible is truly science fiction. I told it last night to take a few of my videos and make a best-of cut, which would take my editor about 5 days, and it made it in like 14 minutes. It wasn't quite good enough, I have to admit, but it was, because it takes a lot of judgment to figure this out, right? But I mean, the stuff that's happening around us is truly, truly mind-boggling. I mean, this future is utter uncertainty. And this is not just because of technology, right? It's also because of geopolitics, of course. It's because of the lack of collaboration, because of climate change, a lot of issues. And they're piling up. And you can tell a lot of people feel tense about this. It's interesting, I was researching last week about the fact that in Europe, the numbers are shrinking. All the countries are declining. And that is because most people between 25 and 35, 70% are now saying they will not have children because the future does not look good. I mean, this is an argument, right? My own kids are saying that to me, right? They should know better. I always say the future is better than we think, but it's hard to show that today. As we're going here, we have 5 very, very big things. We have the energy shift. Of course, everything is going post-fossil fuel, geopolitics, technology, workplace shifts. We're not going to work like we used to in 5 years. And in 10 years, we're going to debate and figure out what is work actually and what does a machine not do. I mean, these are fundamental changes in society, value shifts. When we're moving from molecules as the number one thing, now it's electrodes. It's digital. That's what the new economy is. And economic shifts, so we're moving to a new world where it's a bit more than just prosperity. Finally, and there's been a lot of discussion about this, it's a huge paradigm shift. You can say in some ways, people are saying it's a civilizational reset. All these things together. Right. Great opportunity, but also quite scary. If you're my age and you're saying, okay, I can do this for 5 or 10 years and figure this out, but if you're 25 today, then you're saying, oh, this is like, I don't know, a fundamental shift in pretty much everything. And I always say it could be heaven or it could be hell. As we know, technology is morally neutral until we use it. So what we do with all these things, that's the important part. And what is the priority? What's the policy? How do we get along? How do we collaborate? Very, very big topics that are pretty much around the world now. But we also should not forget that a certain amount of uncertainty makes progress. Right? How do humans change? Pain and love. The pain version is the German version, just kidding. Now, pain, right? We have pain because revenues are going away, or we're getting divorced, we're having problems, right? We fall in love with an idea. That's how we change. So all the uncertainty right now is a very, very big change mechanism that we should not forget. We have 8 game changes now happening at the same time. We're going to distribute the slides later so you can take another look at it. But basically, it's not just AI. Everybody wants to talk about AI. But it's at least 8, and every other week, there's a new one. So artificial intelligence, quantum computing, nuclear fusion, humanoid robots. And this year, we'll see very big IPOs, 3 IPOs that are primarily marked as AI, right, in the US. But they're actually covering all of that ground from space all the way to humanoid robots. And the interesting part here is that, we can look at this and we can say, okay, when they all come together, it's like a huge wave influencing each other, right? AI and robots and synthetic biology, genetic engineering, the pharma industry future, and so on. It's like a giant change ball, right? And that's only just the next 5 to 10 years. And this challenge will be for us to say, okay, one example, renewable energy is no longer what we used to call a wild card, like something that we'll eventually do. The facts are now, I just collected them again this morning, solar is already cheaper than most fossil fuel, all fossil fuel, 4 times faster to build a solar plant than any other plant. And cars, of course, running electric costing 1/3 of the cost in average on a global scale. I mean, these numbers are not new to you, I hope, but clearly, huge. And we have other wild cards, what we call wild cards, like nuclear fusion. Right? Nuclear fusion is the opposite of fission. Right? So it's not explosions, it's more like implosions. And that's been researched for over 40 years. Hundreds of billions of dollars. Now, once we have this, we have clean, parentheses, nuclear energy. There's no side products here, right? We have unlimited energy. I say energy like Spotify. We basically just click the button and you have, this is roughly 10 years, maybe 5 even, maybe 15, but not 50. The stats here are pretty astounding. Once we have nuclear fusion, it's abundant energy. Imagine what we could do with abundant energy. This will not roll out, of course, from 1 year to the next. So let's say 20 years time frame for that to happen. But truly mind-boggling change that I think we're going to see in that future. The other one is, of course, synthetic biology. Think of it like a marriage of biology and engineering to create new products that used to be in nature. Like one example is, of course, a milk product or a coffee product that's not actually from animals, or in the case of coffee, from plants. It's made synthetically. Synthetic fuel, of course, we've seen that everywhere, and synthetic meat, cultured meat. I know it sounds disgusting, right? But once you've tried it, there are lots of discussions about it, right? But this is basically going to substitute a lot of products with synthetic biology. Put that together with AI, we can solve a lot of problems, a lot of practical problems about how we're going to eat in the future. Comes down to this. Business as usual is dead or dying. We still do a lot of business as usual, whether it's about administration, accounting, flying, of course, right? But a lot of these things are ending, and many of them, it's good that they're ending. Other ones, difficult. We don't really have another way to fly today. That's still a bit off. Solar travel is for small planes, maybe. But this is basically what's happening as we're going into this new world where we're going from extraction, which is the past, so extracting oil, extracting data, like social media, extracting from agriculture, to the world of creation. I'm very happy to see here at DHL all these examples of how we're making that shift, going from extraction to creation, because that is the future. I mean, it's mind-blowing when we see that all coming together. This is kind of the entire new economy is creating new things. That's a very powerful message, but it can be kind of hard when you're used to the business of extraction. Like, I was just in Colombia 3 weeks ago, and there's a big debate about, the president does not want to use oil and gas as an export, but they need money to fund other things, including, of course, new energy, right? So it's always a constant back and forth between those two different things. And that comes along with the biggest paradigm shifts we've seen in the last 50 years. The first one, of course, this one. It's hard to understand what that really means, but 300 years ago, the Industrial Revolution changed everything. It changed our jobs. We used to be working in agriculture, especially here in Holland. I think the number was 92%, like 150, 200 years ago. Right? And that shifted very quickly because of the Industrial Revolution. Now we have the Intelligence Revolution. In a nutshell, you could say computers are no longer stupid. They can do things. Can they think like humans? No. They think like machines, which actually is better in many ways than what we can do in terms of speed. Right? But that is really a fundamental revolution because it also brings us here. Now, we've always thought of climate change and the planet as a challenge. Now it's a business. Right? To switch to renewable energy is the biggest business in the last section since the Industrial Revolution. Right? Switching to green renewable energy. And of course, what goes along with this is what Al Gore called, 18 years ago, sustainable capitalism. Is there any such thing? I don't know. But capitalism as we know it, parenthesis, old-fashioned Milton Friedman capitalism, the purpose of a company is to make money for the shareholders. That was in the 70s. Now we're discussing, well, how can we have an inclusive capitalism? Big debate, I know, here in Holland also. Well, what exactly does that mean? Is it still capitalism if we pay a tax that goes into a fund for people to not work, as has been suggested because of AI? The last one is the biggest one, our work. We used to do our routines, and now the machines do the routines. Think about that for a second. My job has changed fundamentally. There was a lot of routine involved in researching. A lot of that stuff is done now by my digital helpers, by my assistants. I still have to do the storytelling and all the other details. So I would say maybe 30% or so is routine. If your job is 90% routine, like call center, you are in the future going to have to look for something else. Right? 6% difficult, 30%, yeah, but all jobs have a certain amount of routine. And now machines are learning those from humans. I mean, the declared goal of OpenAI is to actually automate most of the routine work in the world. That's their goal. So really powerful stuff that's happening here as we're moving into the sort of three revolutions. I think this is a cornerstone of my presentation. I call that Big Blue, the digital revolution, not IBM, just blue for the color. Okay, so that's the digital revolution, AI. Big Green, sustainability. And the last one is a hard one, the Big Purple. Purple is in India the color for human things, for the chakras. Okay. Now these are all coming together. We're moving into this, of course, digital transformation, sustainable transformation, and the human transformation. And what does that mean? Well, it means that my generation, which was a very simple business model of prosperity and profit, is making way for a new generation that's also interested in people, planet, other things, and a different kind of capitalism. This debate is raging, of course, in politics, as you can see, all over the world, from Mamdani in New York all the way to Chile, and of course, Argentina recently. The challenge is also this one. We also have a geo-economic revolution, a geopolitical, a world order revolution. The American president is changing the way that everything is done in politics. Well, in fact, he's probably ignoring most of the ways that we used to do things. And that's setting off a whole chain reaction of what's happening. I'll give you some examples so you can just kind of take a look at that later. But basically, we could say, well, that's really interesting. The official comment of the European Commission, the European Parliament, is that the United States is no longer a friend. This is a really interesting story. We grew up with the United States being the fringe, right? And now this is kind of like cut. Right? And that changes the whole equation. Like, where do you invest? And is the dollar going to be good in the future? And, there's this whole rift. So we are getting divorced, right? Europe is getting divorced with the United States. But as in any divorce, it's really interesting. We can still talk afterwards. We can still be friends. We don't have to fight. And in some divorces, people actually get back together. Right? So this process is painful, but it's good for us. In many ways, probably overdue. So a really interesting story, as our flag really is about humanity. In Europe, we are humanists. We care mostly that there should be human flourishing. Not to say that Americans aren't humanists, right? But there's a different emphasis there, right? And now we're discussing this. This is a really interesting story, to be independent. Right? Did you know 96% to 8 billion euros per year of our IT budget goes to America? It's like everything we use is American. How can we be sovereign? Well, good luck. But that is the idea. And now we're going to grow European AI. We have a regulation and all these things. But this is going to be important. Because now we don't really know, can we trust them? I don't just mean the president or the government, but also the tech companies. Right? So there's all these debates about this. For us in Europe, clearly, this is the next big objective. Green is the new digital. I mean, if we just hold on to that for a second, right? We're not going to be number one in AI in Europe. Right? Even though we do have lots of researchers, like in Switzerland, that end up going to the States. This is our objective. And as weird as it sounds kind of like socialist. Right? The next one is really interesting. Sustainable is the new profitable. It's a strange story. When you look today at the stock market, it's the reverse, right? But this is where we are going. If you're not sustainable, it doesn't matter if you make money, because it won't last. And we're slowly getting there, despite of everything that's happening in geopolitics, which is, again, the opposite. And here in Europe, we're struggling with this to create human-centered AI. AI that is good for people. What good does the technology do if it's not good for people? It could be good for the stock market, right, or for the military. But now this is a big story. This is our path into the future, and we're now becoming sort of the United States of Europe in many ways. Great article today by Ian Bremmer, who talked about Donald Trump being the accidental green president, because what he has done, he has showed everyone around the world how hard it is to depend on oil and gas, and why we shouldn't. Right? I mean, it's a paradox, right? Because he obviously doesn't even believe in green whatever, right? Just like he doesn't believe in democratic ever. Right? It's much more a different course of running things, owning things. It's going back to the past. But now this is really interesting, because now we may actually have a benefit from this. Now we're incentivized to look in other directions. Let's talk about what happens with humans and machines. This is, of course, the number one topic today. We're going to a future where that is kind of every day, totally normal. This is what's happening with AI. When you're looking at this just a few years ago, we're only down here today. Right? I mean, we're at this point where we're saying, okay, this revolution is happening, and we're really only just here. 2030 is when we're very likely to have a machine that is smarter, parenthesis, than all humans combined. That, of course, is a relative term because we don't really know what that means because we have intelligence like emotions and the body that machines don't have. Right? But in terms of logic, this is where we are going. So the question is, will there be an AI that's smarter than all of us? A super brain. In many ways, we're already there in many ways. I mean, it's like, if you query ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, right? But then we have this. This is you guys. Me as well, I hope. We have 8 different kinds of intelligence, and we don't really know what it all means together, right? We have bodily, kinesthetic, naturalistic, interpersonal and musical intelligence, and of course, social intelligence and emotional intelligence. Impossible for a machine to have that because the machine doesn't exist. The machine can copy it, yes, can act like it, yes, potentially dangerous because it's confusing us. In fact, when you're listening to your AI speak to you, it kind of feels like the movie Her. Remember that a few years ago? I was like, yeah, it's a very nice, open person telling me things. So this is an interesting challenge for us. And AI is now a general purpose technology. And it's upending the global balance of power. Economic power, military power, all of these things are coming together. United States, China, India, the UAE, and this is what's happening to us in Europe. It's forcing us to create the United States of Europe. I mean, that has been a concept for a long time. And now we're sitting here and saying, okay, defense, police, cyber, energy, we have to team up because that is the only way, the only ticket forward. And again, painful, right? For us to come together to create this together. But this is really, I think, a positive development as we're looking at the IPOs and the stock market of AI. Do you see any European companies here? Well, it's 96% American companies. There's a good reason for that, right? Americans are very good at this, but we have to give it to them. But, this is, of course, a difficult proposition. What do we do in Europe with this? Do we create a market, a new stock market, a new idea where we can realize our part of this? Here's Sam Altman of OpenAI talking about what he thinks.
See a future where intelligence is an utility, like water.
Metered. Think about that for a second. The intelligence he is talking about is, of course, logic. Because emotional intelligence or social intelligence or bodily does not come in a meter. Those are human qualities. They're impossible to meter. But what exactly is he planning? Well, this is his plan. Chatbots, reasoners, that's where we are today. AI agents, which I'm sure you talked about pretty much all day. Not hamsters, agents. Right? Innovators, AI innovators, right? And AI organizations. That's in fact their goal, is to build companies, billion-dollar companies with 10 people. That is a scary thought. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Well, this is what's happening, I think, around us. And many people are standing there and saying, oh my God. But rest assured, there is still a way out. I'll talk about that in a second. But this is a very common reaction, people saying, well, I don't really know what to do. And God knows I've screamed about this many times in the last few years. And so the AI made a nice video of me, said, look at me in the last 10 years and make a nice video. But for that, it's good. I save you the screaming was muted. But so Doug Engelbart, the founder of AI, really, the original man who started the whole discussion about machine thinking, right? He says great technology should not aim to replace people, humans, but to amplify. And that is the mission, right? To make us work better or live better. Right? So, augmentation, helping us, languages, translation, documents, research. Some kind of automation, even though that is already a border case. What we don't want is we don't want dehumanization. 30% of people today that use AI, chatbots, they use it for personal therapy. They use it as a friend. I mean, this goes beyond the business use of it. It's like saying, okay, check my emails. Does my wife really love me? I mean, how stupid can you be? It's like, okay. So, and people do that. And then they have AI therapists to help them with the rest of their problems. So this idea of general intelligence leads to dehumanization. That's not something we want. What we want for business and society is what I call CAVA. Right? CAVA is the alternative to superintelligence. Okay, cognification. That means just getting deeper into the facts. Augmentation, helping us do practical things. Virtualization, digital twins, stuff you use probably every day. And then to some degree, some automation. I use the CAVA term because, everybody loves champagne. Very simple to understand. So I think if we do that, we're going to already be way ahead of everybody else. We don't need to invent digital people and substitute humans. If we just do this, like I'm sure you've talked about all day, I think we'll be in good neighborhood for innovation. There's been a lot of research about this saying, okay, that automation, which is the yellow thing down here, if we automate, we can eliminate 16% of occupations. 16. I think the reality is more like 6, right? It's possible, but here's a real nugget from this. Augmentation, 50% of occupations, 20 to 40% of time saved. That's the goal, right? Augmenting ourselves, not replacing ourselves. And even that is overstated because it looks easy to augment. It looks easy, but you see now that the return from AI is still pretty slow in coming, right? And that's going to be improving, I think, in the near future. So we have AI boosting scientific recovery, helping in cancer search, helping to solve battery problems, full automation of certain occasions, scientific math problems, and so on and so on. All that stuff is real at this very moment. Things can be invented that the AI helps us inventing that weren't possible before. The bottom line is showing up here in a second, right? The bottom line is, with all that stuff, is this. Traditional approaches would have taken 20 years. We did it in less than a week. That is about factual things. Right? And this powerful tool is becoming available now. I think this is really exciting and offers lots of possibilities. And if you are a designer and you're watching Anthropic design, then you look at this, you're saying, okay, so you guys are going to create this that is essentially a designer in a bottle or in an app, right? They could do pretty much anything that a regular designer does. I gave this to my designer, and he wasn't happy about the thought of Claude being able to do that. And you've probably used it yourself, but the next one kind of shows you what's happening. We're going from the first part, the chatbots, to coding, and then here, down here, is where the bot does all of the work. All of the work. Okay. We're not quite there yet, but that's called recursive intelligence, where the bot can actually serve itself to create new things. Fable 5, just released yesterday. There's already a guy who was on the phone with the customer, and the AI was transcribing the call with the customer and building a software app for the customer in real time at the same time. I mean, we're talking about things that were truly science fiction. How far that will take us? Yeah, well, this is a huge challenge, I think, for us. And in some ways, going back to the video I showed earlier, some of us can say, well, that's cool because now I can just chill. I can just sit back, and unfortunately not. Because really what we need to do is we need to keep this in mind as we're going here, that this idea of the AI doing the thinking is called cognitive surrender. In good old regular terms, we get lazy. This is not something you want to do. So if you're a coder, yes, you can outsource a lot of the monkey work to the coding. Your job is just moving up the food chain. It's not gone. This is important to remember. So refuse the temptation, for example, cutting and pasting from AI. Very bad idea. Never, ever do that. I mean, I use AI, as you can see, sometimes to kick off the process. But this, of course, is a tough one because it leads us to be more lazy. We're going to have to figure out what to do. And now we have all these ideas. For example, roughly 2030, we may be at the point where a lot of jobs aren't being refilled. So maybe we need a digital dividend, something being paid back to people. Because number one is clearly, then if that happens, then economic value shifts to capital, not to labor. That's, again, industrial revolution, right? And the second one is that it becomes hard to make a lot of money when everything is shifting to capital. Hard to participate. So there's been a lot of debate about what's called the universal basic capital. You heard about universal basic income. This is a version of it. Right? And that is something we're going to see debated in the next year. It's now just really a big topic all over the world. a European social wealth fund paid for with shares in the AI companies. All right? This is not just a European idea. Also, even President Trump himself said he likes the idea, which makes me deeply suspicious, but God knows, maybe something good will come from it, right? But this idea we already have in Alaska. In Alaska, if you live in Alaska, you get between $1,000 and $2,000 per year because this guy is telling that you live on top of. Right? It's something, it's just free money because you're there. Right? The same thing may happen with AI. We will see where that has taken us. So I'm going to wrap up and tell you a little bit about what to do now. I think this idea, the last one, is imminent. So you may want to take a good look at this financial models. So Charlie Munger, Berkshire Hathaway, I think he just died 2 years ago, rest in peace. He used to say, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. This is so important. If the incentive is to increase profit and growth and nothing else matters much, we get a certain outcome. We see that happening right now. If we have a wider incentive, I call this the 5 Ps, people, planet, purpose, peace, and prosperity, that we are judged by, we have a different outcome. Imagine if a company was judged on the stock market by ticking those 5 boxes. And yes, it's a lot like the UN Sustainable Development Goals in many ways. But if we actually paid people a bonus or a dividend based on ticking the box, if we actually had a sort of holistic business model, then we could solve a lot of problems. And we are at this junction right now. We have the roughly 15 to 40-year-olds screaming for a better idea of the world. People my generation kind of saying, okay, it's just finishing. And in the middle, it's just a huge mess. So we have to figure out where this is going. Makes me hopeful that we have all these technologies that are just mind-boggling tools. But you know, the thing about tools is, if you have a hammer, we don't need a law that says you cannot use the hammer in a certain way. I can use the hammer and kill the neighbor, I can build a house. But we don't have laws for hammers. Right? But we do need laws for AI, because it's just instrumentally bigger, right? Existentially bigger. So we don't just need good tools, we also need good telos. It's a Greek word that talks about purpose and direction. And asking the question, why are we doing this? Because each one of those things could be heaven or hell for us. A humanoid robot in the right situation, I know it's widely used in Asia already, for example, could be a great thing. But also we have to think about who exactly is in charge. And do we have rules and regulations around this? Right? Do we need some bottom line? Yeah? If this is the future of Amsterdam, or in many ways you could say that's already the present in Amsterdam, lots of broken down bicycles. But, you know, we have a challenge here. Technology doesn't have ethics. Technology is neutral. It can be used for both. But without ethics, we will not be there. Because the important stuff for us, of course, is how we collaborate. So to remember, it's not about automating everything. It's about augmenting. It's not about cutting human jobs. Right? It's about making us more powerful so that we can move up the food chain and get rid of the grunt work. Certain jobs will get lost. That is a fact, just like in the Industrial Revolution. But new jobs will emerge from this. Technology alone will not be enough to solve this problem. This is the American view that I hear from venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. Just get out of the way and get it done. That's not going to work here. That's like saying nuclear power. We just get out of the way and figure out what happens. Well, that didn't work, and then we need global collaboration on this. Too much of a good thing can be a very bad thing. Smoking, drinking, alcohol, eating. We don't make drinking illegal in most places, but we have rules around it. And people know it's dangerous to drink a bottle of whiskey for breakfast. The same with AI. Too much AI will not be a good thing. Too little AI will not be a good thing. So we have to find a way forward how we can use this, how we can find the human balance. Very important for the green future, because that's the topic of this event, right? If we want a good future, we have to work on sustainable economics. Different incentive. Right? If our incentive is to maximize income, we're never going to solve climate change. We will definitely not solve AI. We need to have a wider objective of where that's going. So let's move away from this discussion about if and how, because in the near future, in 5 years, it's no longer whether we can do something. You can upload your brain to the internet, you can live virtually, you can live in the metaverse, you can do all those things in 5 years. The question is why? Is it a good thing? And we're just in the beginning of this. This is the question we have to ask. Why are we doing this? Where is it going? Do we want a world like this where AI is kind of taken us over? I doubt it. I think we want a world like this where we have it next to us. And that alone is a huge shift already. It's not like, we're going to easily use a tool like this that's potentially, a million times as smart as we are. We have to figure out what exactly it is. And the same goes for women, of course. I did find a woman. AI is not just guys there. Right? So some bullets on this. We have to acknowledge the fear. I know many of us feel fearful just when you're watching television or reading social media. It's like, oh my God, is this actually happening? I mean, we just pile one bad thing on top of the other. We have to sometimes learn how to switch off. We have to look at sources that are not negative. We have to maintain our equilibrium as we go forward, because there'll be more like this, more disruption. We have to collaborate and work together. Keep asking questions. This is the most important part. In the world of AI, it's not so much about giving answers, than asking the right questions. Just ask, why is this? How does it work? Is it explainable? Is it good? Keep thinking. Nothing happens without effort. Right? If the AI tells you, you don't have to make an effort because I do it for you, it is just plain old lying. Because that is the copy of the effort. Everybody knows you could be a musician with an iPad in 10 hours. Some people have been very lucky with that. I was a musician, I spent 10,000 hours. I never really got good at it, but it takes effort. Don't let people tell you that the effort can be saved. The really good stuff needs effort. That's just part of the human chain. Improve your human-only skills. Human-only skill, creativity, understanding, right? Wisdom, inspiration, imagination. These are the skills that no machine can substitute for quite some time, unless we design them to do that, which we shouldn't. But the human-only skills is what our kids should learn. 10 years ago, we said the kids should know how to program. I think that's still good, to know how to program, but it's much more important to have a conflict and to figure out how to solve it, how to build things. Resist the machine thinking. Somebody comes to you and says, just do this, and then it's, no. We don't want to think like a machine. We want to think like a human, because that's our value, right? When we become a commodity otherwise. The future success formula, I think for every business now, it's simple like this. Great tools, technology, trust with the customer, trust, insight, and wisdom, telos, purpose. Those three things together, not just the tools. Everybody will have the tools. This is the winning team of the future. Tools, trust, and telos. So I want to end with this. Buckminster Fuller, he says, we are to be architects of the future, not its victims. And this is the spot where we are right now, today. I always say the future is better than we think, but we do have to start designing it and figure out what is our preferred future. Thanks very much for listening, and good future and good luck. Thank you.